Hi everyone and welcome back to the DIY tutorials. This is part 2 and we're going to continue working on this Cups app that we started on in part 1. This time we're going to be focusing on making custom views and feeding them data. So let's get into it. So welcome back everybody. Yes, this is going to be part 2 of this DIY tutorial series. So if you've seen the first part, great, we're going to be building off of that. If you haven't, and maybe you're new, this is the first one you've seen, I'm going to link the first one in the description so you can either catch up with that if you want to, or see what we did in the first one. And I explained a bit about DIY tutorials and how that's going to work. This week we're going to focus on making our own custom views. We're going to explain it a little bit, and then we're going to look at how we then feed data to these custom views. And it all makes sense. I'm going to explain it as we go. First though, let's just have a little summary of what a DIY tutorial is, just in case you missed the first video. For those that want to jump straight into the tutorial, I'll put the timestamp above me here so you can jump to that. But I just want to expand quickly on what a DIY tutorial is, just in case you haven't seen this type of tutorial before. So a DIY tutorial is basically my way of helping you learn how to code, but not get your hand held through the entire thing. Because when you're learning how to code, as you should do, you will go to tutorials, you'll learn, and how they help teach you is by building through projects. Nothing wrong with these types of tutorials at all. This is how I learn and everything. But they guide you through and basically hold your hand through the whole process of this is what you do now, and this is what you do now. When you now go into making your own apps, working for a client, that is completely gone. You now have to make the app. You have to think for yourself is what's next, what's next, what's next? How do I fix this problem? How do I go about thinking like a programmer? Well, what I'm trying to do is the way that you will learn and do things at that point, which is you have an application, a feature that you need to make. You then go online, you then find a way, a tutorial, an explanation, something that helps you be able to make that feature or an element of the feature. You then take that and apply it to your project, which doesn't always go seamlessly, and you have to think about it, and you have to be able to try and play around with it and get that idea of you can't constantly 100% be making progress in the same direction. You do have to sit back and go, okay, I'm going to experiment. What if I type this? What if I type that? And you play around with it until it works and you get what you want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you how to make an application, but I'm not going to handhold you and show you how to make the application itself. What I'm going to do is show you the finished result, and then I'm going to show you each individual element of how to make it. And then it'll be up to you to apply those elements to make this app. And hopefully it's going to help you have all the information that you need, but still then have to do the logical thinking of a programmer by putting it all together to then make this project. Hopefully that makes sense, and you'll see how that works in just a second as we go to the laptop. If not, check out the first one, and again, it's the same procedure, teaching you the elements and then how it all fits together for you to put together on your own. So let's get to our laptop, and then we're going to figure out how to do this next step. Okay, so on our second video of this tutorial, we, like I said, going to be focusing on making our own custom views and feeding them data. Now, if we look back on our screen, we've got the app that we made last week. So maybe yours looks like this. Probably I could imagine it looks 100 times better, but this is just to demonstrate what's possible. So here are our cells that produce the cup image with its details next to it. Now, what we want to do is we want to code this properly, not like last week where we did use stacks and everything to create this view, and then we create the next one and the next one. However, this creates just such messy code. If I just show you, I created it with all the stacks like I did on the last tutorial, and you'll notice, look, so to make this view here, we have done all of this stacks, and it's all just, you try read through this, it's really confusing, brackets everywhere, and we've ended up making 188 lines of code just to make this view here, okay? It's not necessary. It's harder to read and it's harder to change. It's prone to errors. What happens if you get more cups, for example? Well, it's not dynamic. You've got to go in there and manually code the whole thing. So this isn't the way that you would really do it, okay? What we want to do is we want to look at making our own custom view to simplify this entire process. And it's how you will make your views in apps. Because the principle that we always want to focus, and when I was learning, well, I'm learning, as I learned, was always reinforced on me, is the principle of dry, which is don't repeat yourself. Okay, so dry coding. You just want to be able to code something once and then reuse that code constantly throughout your app. And we can do this by making our own custom views, because if you look at things, so on here, okay, we have reused views ourselves already. Okay, so the view image we have repeatedly used when we've needed an image. We haven't gone in there and manually coded together how we put an image together. Image is already a setup view that we've used with all that code in the background. All we have to do is type in image, refer to what we need, and modify it how we want, and that's what we got. Same with text. Okay, again, all this code in the background to make the text work. We don't need to worry about that. All we do is write in text. We import that view, give it text, modify it, and then we have our view. And we've repeatedly done this through here. So what we're going to do is make our own custom view that creates this as an element. And then all we've got to do is say, I want this view, then I want to feed in this view, this data, and it will be displayed within this same layout every time that we want to use it. So let's say we get adventurous and start making another view, which isn't about cups, it's about plates and bowls. Well, all we have to do is import the same view and give it the data for the cups and bowls. And that's how any app works. You look at Instagram, for example, Facebook, all of the posts, they look exactly the same format. All that's happened is they've set up this format of what makes a post, and then they've fed it data. And that data is what's different every time you look at a post. The format's the same, and that's how you reuse your code and make custom views. But it does involve a little sort of steps of process. So let's go by it bit by bit, and we're going to make this up together. Okay? So to show you how to make your own custom view, I am going to, not as I said in the previous one, I'm not going to show you how to make a cup view. I'm going to do our own thing. And then you can use this, show you how to make each element, and then from that, we will then be able to make your app. So here's a custom view for me, okay? So this is a custom view. Here is a standard view for me, okay? So a brand new app, I'm going to use Pokemon as an idea of how to make a sell out. This is what I'm going to make my app about, but keep yours about these cups or whatever else you're doing. First of all, to make a new view, we want to right click over here on the browser and we're going to make a new file, okay? We want all these options. Don't get overly confused. We really just want a user interface element, don't we? So we want a SwiftUI file. Call this whatever you want. I'm going to call this a cell view, okay? But call it whatever you want and then create it. Make sure this target is ticked. Oh, sorry, because I did that from the tester, so don't worry about that. That shouldn't come up for you. And here we have our custom view, okay? Now I'm going to just type this together as a view. So type yours together, replicating what you did with the other stacks and everything, okay? So we're going to use stacks, we're going to use images and text to put this all together. So put it together how you will. I'm going to just do this if you follow. Oh. Right, so that is my, oh actually let's put a bit of padding around this. Back here. Padding. Okay, right, so that's a custom view that we've got here. So I've got my image, I've got my what it is, okay, the name of my Pokemon and everything else, okay. Now, the trick is how do we now, I've just set in information here, well, how do I change this now? Do I have to make a new custom view for every element? Because it doesn't really save any coding, does it? Well, no, we don't have to do that at all, okay. What we're going to do is we're going to give it some parameters. We're going to get some parameters, and then we're going to put those parameters inside the view. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. So up here, type out exactly what it is. So var image. Well, what is the image going to be called? The image is always called a string, isn't it? So if I say that that's a string, okay. So when it gets to this, what do I want it to be? Well, this image, whenever it's fed something, I want it to be fed whatever image I'm feeding into the view. So I'm just going to call that image, okay? So that will now custom, and this is going to throw up errors now because I've got no data in the preview. So we're going to ignore that for the time being, and we'll put in some detail in a sec. So can you see here now, we're typing out a whole bunch of inputs that we want to input to this view, okay? So break down on the coffee or the cup one, sorry, what it all is, okay? Try and break it down and write a little list, okay? So for my one, I've got an image, I've got a name of the Pokemon, I've got its HP, and I've got its type, okay? So that's what I want to type up here. So I'm going to do name, and then I'm going to do HP, and then I need to do type, okay? Now, what are each of these going to be? Well, name's always going to be string, okay? HP, well, I'm going to want to put it in here in this text, aren't I? So again, we're going to keep that as a string. And type, okay? I'm going to keep all of these strings, okay? So all of these are strings, nothing, no errors or anything, okay? But what we want to do is now feed them into here. So we're in the text, I want this to be the name, okay? Now hopefully this is all making sense to you. If not, please just shout at me in the comments. Now with this one, I'm going to obviously not put HP every time. HP is always going to be HP. So maybe what we could do is the string interpretation, and say, oh sorry, I did the wrong slash, didn't I? And that's going to be HP. Yeah, and then type. Well, again, I don't need to keep putting type every time. How about we just try this? Do that, and then we're going to feed type into here. So can you see what we've done here? Our inputs are feeding into the elements that make up this cell, okay? So our image is going to go into our image, our name is going to go into our name, HP into HP, and type into type, okay? This stands for any view. With the cup, it's going to be similar. You've got a name, you've got a cup, type, you've got a date that it was bought, okay? And you've got an image of the cup, okay? So, right, okay, so that all makes sense so far, but now we've got some plugs here that need filling with data. Where are we going to get this data from? Well, first of all, we need to set a format of what this data is going to be, okay? Now, again, bear with me and see how this all works, okay? So we're going to do a new view file. This will be a little bit different though. This is going to be a Swift file. This is a base file. It's not a view or anything. Simply just setting us up a format for what this data is going to conform to, okay? So hopefully it makes sense. It's going to be a type, like a string and an int and everything. They are types. We're making our own type, okay? Which is going to feed into these cells. So I'm going to call this a Pokemon. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a struct. We need to give the struct a name before. Now, what is this struct going to be? So what's the format that we need? Well, we've already just seen in cell view here, we need an image, we need a name, we need a HP and a type to make up the Pokemon that would then be fed into this view, okay? So let's put that in, okay? So view an image, well, it's going to be a string, okay? Just like we just said, don't we? Need its name, again, that's the string. It's going to need its HP, which again is a string, and then it's going to need, oh, sorry, that cough, tickly cough just won't go away. Another string. Okay, so we've got our template for what makes up a Pokemon. Now, again, this might not be making 100% sense if this is the first time you've explored this, but hopefully I'm going to make it simple enough for you in just a second. So if we're going to make a new, actually no, you would normally create a new file, but I want to help you see how it all relates together. So I'm going to do it just below, but normally you would do a new file like we just did and put it in there, okay? I'm going to make a new struct, okay? Now this is going to be called Pokemon data. Again, call yours whatever it's going to be. I would assume that this is going to be up here. Your struct would be cup, and then obviously maybe cup data or something like that, okay? Whatever you want to call it. Now our goal is, okay, we want to take this parameters, okay? We then want to take data, which is what we're going to now make in here that will then feed into our cell, okay? Now, hopefully, when you see this all come together, it will all make sense. And I'm going to just show you now. Sorry. What have we just done? Okay, so I've just made a parameter within this new struct, Pokemon data. Don't worry about the error. It's a static let. So this list, this array, is now going to be filled with the data that we need. It's static because we want this to never change. It's going to be persistent. It's going to be around in our entire app. It's not going to go anywhere. It's always there to refer to. It's not going to be duplicated and copied everywhere. It's simply going to just exist that we can reference to, okay, in this app. And what this is going to be is this is going to be an array or a collection of Pokemon. And now if you see, look, our new type Pokemon here is all available with all of our elements there, okay? So I'm just going to take a sec to type all of this out. Right, so here we go. So here is our list of Pokemon. So you can see I've made just a list, okay, separated by the comma of Pokemon there, okay. So here is our data for what we're going to do. Now this all is set up to feed straight into our cell view, which is great. Now how do we put this all together? Okay, it's going to come down to our content view. So back where you would have put all of the stacks and everything that you had in the main view, inside that, and I'm going to replicate what you've got there. So that was a scroll view, wasn't it? Okay, so now we're going to go back to our content view, which we're in now, and we're going to now produce in our scroll view. So I'll just make it look the same that you've got on your app, okay? We're now going to produce a list of the cells and populate them with the data from this database that we made in our list, okay? I'm hoping that it's all coming together for you and I'm explaining this simply enough. If not, again, please leave me in the comments and I'll have to explain it again more thoroughly and simply. So I really hope that this is okay. Now, what we're going to do though in this is that we need to create some sort of variable or constant that's going to hold all of this data that we can refer to within this view, okay? So let's bring the data in to the view by calling room1, which is going to equal our data. That's okay. So do you remember what we're referring to here? If we look back here at our struct, so we've got a Pokemon data, which is containing the list, which is all of this array. Okay. So going back, we can see that we've referred to this. So as far as everyone's concerned, this is an array of Pokemon data. Okay, because it equals it. Okay, hopefully that makes all sense. So now what we're going to do is we're now going to pass over a for each, and thankfully Xcode, especially recently with the latest updates, does a lot of auto correct for you, so it already knows what you're trying to refer to. So hopefully that will help you. So for each Pokemon, which is obviously all of this array. Okay, so each count of it, which should be 3. Pokemon, in my case anyway, it'll be more cups for you. Pokemon in, we're going to go new variable with Pokemon in. What we're going to create? Well, we're going to create our own view. We're not creating text. We don't need all of that. We've actually created our own cell view, okay? And what we're going to now refer to is this Pokemon element, okay, this new variable, and its data that we want to access, okay? Over here, do you see the data? It's broken down, the image, the name, the HP, and we want to pass it into this cell view, okay? So go ahead and just type in our reference to this dot, and it will have all the types there, okay? So we want to refer to the image. The name, well, we want to, again, okay, we want to pass in the Pokemon name. The HP, well, again, we want to, oh, sorry, I shouldn't have pressed that. I'm going to press the Pokemon HP, and the type, well, again, Pokemon type. Now, there is one issue that is going to come up for us, okay, and it's going to cause us a little problem with producing this, and that is because when it's creating a for each loop, again, I don't know where you're coming from, if this is a new thing for you or if it's something that you've done before possibly, but not too extensively. For each loops require an ID because as it creates each of these elements, it needs to refer to it somehow. Because imagine, later on we will be doing this, but imagine later on we create each of these as a button, okay? They have to go somewhere, have to change them in some aspect, or they're going to independently look a little bit different. It needs to have some sort of reference to refer to this, okay? At the moment, there is nothing we're giving it to give it some sort of ID, some sort of identification, so that each row is its own view, okay, separate from the others. And the reason what we're just going to do is telling us that it doesn't conform to identifiable, okay? We're going to fix that pretty simply by going back to our type, Pokemon, and our type is going to conform to identifiable, okay? These are protocols. So on the struct, type identifiable, and then we have, now we need to obviously make the identifiable as, it's going to scream at us because it needs to give some sort of ID, okay? So we're going to say ID, and that's going to be of a type UID, and you can see here, okay, the definition of this, a universally unique value to identify types and first, okay? What we are going to do though, because now what would happen is we've just created a new element here, haven't we? A new aspect that we have to conform to for this type. So all of this is going to freak out because it doesn't have an ID element. Now we don't want to make up one. It's far simpler to let the computer make its own up, make Xcode program one in. So to do that, we're going to do an initializer. But we're going to give this ID a default value, okay? So hopefully that autocomplete all works for you. If not, just type out again self ID. It's going to refer back up to these elements, but hopefully you can just copy this. Otherwise, let that one, we'll see, it will be useful. Just type in this one. Just type in this one. So start in UUID. This one creates, so you go, creates a UID from this reference version 4 random bytes, okay? So doing that, it's going to create its own unique one every time as a default. And that saves us having to worry about making our own IDs, okay? So when we've initialized Pokemon, which we've got here, it's produced its own ID already, okay? It's random identification. And then that solves that problem. We just have to worry about our own data that we want to control, okay? Now going back to our content view, and here we go. So there we have, all right, in our scroll view, it's populated the same format and passed in each of the data of our Pokemon, okay? Now let's just retrace this back again, okay? So we can just, one more time, just help this understand, okay? So we've created in here our own custom view, okay, that we're going to make. So we've just told it exactly how we want it all to look. We then took these elements that we know we're going to use, so name, image, HP, etc., We've then created inputs for them at the top here, okay, and we've told them what type they're going to be. And then we've told these images, well, that image is going to feed onto here, this name's going to feed onto here, just like wires, connecting them up of this is going to go here, this is going to go here, okay, into our cell. Kind of like old telephone lines before my time, but that's the kind of idea that we've got here, okay. Now, we then made a new struct, okay, which is identifiable as we later saw, but each of it's got all of its elements here, okay, that what make up that type, which we need to feed into this cell. And then we made a new struct with a static list and created an array full of the data that we need of that type, okay? So we've passed it all in. Then in our content view, in our actual main view, we've then done a for each loop. And after bringing in a reference to our list, we've then created this, where we pass in a new variable for every iteration of Pokemon. So down the list 3 times, 1, 2, 3. And then it created with that iteration a new cell, which we created in there, passing in the image, the name, and etc., the data that we conformed it to. Okay, now play around with this. You're going to need to be patient. For each loops and this process, it can be very complicated and very daunting when you first do it, if this is your first time. So take your time with it and try and understand it. Best to write it out and see a little flow diagram of where the details go, the logic behind each step, okay? So try that out. One other little thing and hiccup I would advise you about is in cell view, okay? It's possibly going to cause you errors if you, especially on your preview and later on when you're trying to use your content view, of not having anything in your preview information down here. So it's going to scream at you basically saying that it needs the cell view to give you an image and name and stuff. Just feed some temporary data in there, okay? Just give it some data just so you can preview what it looks like. It's not important. It's not going to reference anything else or affect anything else in the running of the app. It's just so that you can see it, okay? So that's one little hiccup there. But that basically is making a custom view and then feeding data into it. So give that a go. I really do hope that that is explained well enough for you. So thank you very much for bearing with me on this second video of our DIY series. I really do hope that this way of learning is beneficial to you, because as a programmer, it often is taking information and then having to think and digest it of how it's going to work in your own app. And I realise that this requires a lot more patience than maybe other apps do. It can be a bit more frustrating. But genuinely, if you can get used to this way of thinking and processing information and problem solving, then you're really going to go up that level as a programmer and a coder. So I really do hope that this is useful to you and that you find your skills progressing because you're trying to do things this way. So thank you very much for watching. And down below, please feel free to subscribe. Please do like the video as well. That's really useful. And also comment below of things that you found useful, things that you have questions on, and things that you feel that we could be able to look at in future videos. I will be going into next our navigation, using multiple screens and a few other areas as well. So that, again, hopefully we can cover more subjects, you can digest it and progress your skills as a programmer. So thank you very much again for watching. We'll see you again soon.